I told you it would be a quick break. Welcome back, guys. So, as our new speakers come up, make sure you guys are still staying engaged by using the hashtag Bridging the Gap. Remember, you can win some amazing cool prizes throughout the day.
My name is Richard Gilman-Opalski, and I'm a professor of political science at the University of Illinois, Springfield. I'm an author, and I teach political theory and philosophy. The title of my talk is, What's Love Got to Do with Communism? And you're likely to think not much at all. But I want to help you think differently about love, and I want to help you think differently about communism. I want you to think about love as an action, as something we do, not something we get or give, and communism as a form of life, not as a form of government. So I hope this talk helps to bridge the gap between what you think about love and what you think about communism. Okay, so let's talk about communism. Now, many, if not most of you, probably feel that you know enough about communism already. You're likely to think of craven big government that crushes human freedom and Karl Marx as the horrible villain who hatched the whole plan. In fact, there's a good chance that you feel that you know enough about Karl Marx already too. No other author generates such strong feelings among so many people who've never read his books. Now, there are some interesting and important reasons why that's the case, but they would require a talk all their own. For now, suffice it to say that by comparison to what Marx wrote about social and economic affairs, about exploitation in everyday life, his attention to the government was actually minor and fleeting. Instead, Marx was transfixed by a peculiar German concept and word, the Gemeinwesen. The Gemeinwesen, a word meant to grasp the essence of the human community, how the human community is, how it could be, how it should be. Now, Marx's interest in the community was closely connected to his interest in communism. After all, both community and communism share a similar root back to the Gemeinwesen. For Marx, communism meant a real movement to overturn the world of exchange relations. Okay, so what are exchange relations? By exchange relations, we mean to refer to the ways that we interact with other people in terms of what we can get from them in exchange for something else. So, for example, I'll give you some labor in exchange for a wage, or I'll give you some money in the marketplace in exchange for a commodity, or you will give me some rent money in exchange for a place to sleep in an apartment building that I own. Now, our societies from top to bottom are organized in various ways by exchange relations. Our social relations are exchange relations, and Marx felt that was not the healthiest, that was not the best Gemeinwesen. So Marx dreamt of a future where we could one day declare, from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. So he imagined a society where we would expect from other people only what was in line with their abilities, and where we would want to make sure that their needs were met as a first priority. Okay, but aren't there already some places in our existing society where we already do that? Where we only expect from other people what's in line with their abilities and ultimately their desires, and where we want to make sure that their needs are met as a first priority? Indeed, there are places like that in our society. Many examples we could discuss, but let me just share with you one, my relationship with my two children. See, I'm never going to say to my sons, I'm not going to feed you if you don't pay me. I'm never going to say to my kindergartner that if he doesn't do some labor in the house, he's going to have to sleep outside on the street. And that's because exchange has no business there. And we can find similar little islands of communism, if you want to call them that, in other love relations with family, with friends, with anyone with whom you're happily connected for other reasons than money. So, for example, a friend calls me up and says, Richard, I need you. I need your time and attention. I'm going through a divorce. I just lost my job. And I say, you've got my time and attention, friend. It's yours. But it's going to cost you $15 an hour. You see, the second I charge a fee for friendship, the friendship is nullified because exchange has no business in that relationship. In a different example, imagine you and your partner place every chore or favor you do for one another on a spreadsheet to ensure an equal exchange, right? You want to make sure that everything is fair. But instead, what you've just done is placed yourselves on the fast track to resentment, okay? Because exchange doesn't belong there either, okay? So what we're looking for are different ways of relating to other people, and our love relation, our aspiration to love, reveals in all of us a deep yearning for something greater than exchange relations. So let me put it to you this way, almost as a kind of a challenge. Almost as a kind of a challenge to the most capitalist person listening to this talk right now, to the most capitalist person out there. I wager that the best things under capitalism, indeed, the best things in your lives, are the least capitalist things. Now, I invite you to think about that because I think that you're going to agree. Okay, but fine. Why not just leave love relations to be experienced in the private spaces of family and friends? I mean, do we really need to take that whole next step and talk about a whole new social order? Actually, I think that we do. And there again, there are many examples or reasons we could look at. But let's just take the most pressing example of our time. Okay, let's take the example of COVID-19, of this experience with the global pandemic. So variously, all around the world, millions upon millions of people have been left alone or evicted, facing new forms of financial and food insecurity, cut off from the relationships that give their lives meaning, left without the jobs that they used to depend on. And then there are homes. All around the world there are homes, and we like to think of every home as a haven of love. But unfortunately, that isn't the case because many homes are spaces of abuse. And in those homes, children and adults can't wait to go to school, can't wait to go to work to gain temporary refuge from the abuse of their home life. But now, with social distancing and staying at home, a terrible phenomenon. All around the world, victims quarantined with their abusers in horrific private nightmares that I'm afraid we're going to be learning about for the rest of our lives. We already know from study after study that people are unequally impacted by a pandemic. Wealthy countries can be first in line for the vaccine. Many of them even can stockpile the vaccine, having more vaccine than they have of population. And then within wealthy countries, we know that communities of color and impoverished communities bear disproportionate pains. So what's the message of all of this? I mean, clearly there's more than one message. There are many messages, but one of them has to be that we've just got to find a way to attend to other people's needs on the basis of their basic humanity. Now, inside of a love relation, you will never want money to determine whether or not your beloved gets the attention and the care that they need. And we shouldn't want it to determine that either in society more broadly. And I think we've got to learn that lesson from this catastrophe if we want to face the next one with any hope. For example, the ongoing ecological crisis. I mean, what's the message of that crisis? That we should just keep on competitively seizing upon the finite resources of our really very small planet? Or isn't it rather that we need to shift as urgently as possible, if we even can manage to do it, from competition to cooperation, from extraction, wealth and growth, to sustainability and needs? So I think that we do need a new Gemeinwesen, and we need a social order that embodies and reflects it. We need a social order that embodies and reflects it. So now, I'm not here to make a sales pitch for communism. I'm Talk about a contradiction in terms, right? But what I do want is I want to help us see love as something bigger than the private property of a romantic relationship. I want to help us understand the social and the political dimensions of this great power called love. You know, when you go out into the world and you look for someone to fall in love with, you've gone in search of someone with whom to make common cause for something hopeful on the horizon. And if you haven't found that person, or if you haven't found those persons yet, I hope that you do. But it doesn't only happen there. Also in the streets, whenever people gather to rise up against racial profiling, police brutality, racism, sexism, and growing global inequality, there too people gather in search of others with whom to make common cause for something hopeful on the horizon. So I think that when we take a look and see what type of active relationships are motivated, are mobilized by love, we're just going to have to reconcile ourselves with at least one communist aspiration in all of us. Now, here I know someone will say, but Richard, well, you've made some points, but why do you have to use that terrible word, that dirty word, that vilified, awful word, communism? Well, if a word or an idea offer us something useful, offer us something good, maybe even something necessary, we don't abandon it just because it's been misunderstood, and especially not when it's been deliberately misunderstood for political reasons. And more than that, if we don't understand love as a real refuge from, as a living alternative to, a world and a life ruled by money, then we misunderstand love, and we cannot afford to do that. Thank you.
So I think we can all agree that throughout the past year, we've had to learn how to adapt and connect virtually. It's safe and it's still fun. So we want you guys to use the hashtag Bridging the Gap that was created specifically for today's event. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your, opinions. We want to hear what you would have to say if you were a TEDx speaker. So leave the hashtag Bridging the Gap and share your thoughts. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you've enjoyed. You may just win a prize that one of our amazing sponsors provided today.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Ross-Wake. I'm a graduate student at UIS pursuing my master's in public administration and certification in nonprofit management. Over the last 10 years, I've worked with various nonprofits, specifically in sustainable agricultural development. I've had a lot of crazy adventures in my life, including getting married during COVID, raising chickens in my living room, being an accidental stowaway on a yacht, and living, studying, and working in Costa Rica, Thailand, El Salvador, and Kenya. Giving a TED Talk is my next great adventure. In my talk, entitled, "Are You Paying to Perpetuate Poverty?" I will discuss how poverty has become a commodity in the fundraising world, and what I propose is a better way to fundraise. I hope we can bridge the gap between perpetuating poverty and promoting progress. Enjoy.
Think of yourself at your absolute worst. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What would it look like wrapped up in a short story and a photo? What if, without your consent, a well-meaning organization is using that story and photo of you at your worst to raise money for their mission to help people like you? Do you like being the poster child for this organization? I mean, they're making money off of your sad story, your sad photo. How do you feel about them trading your dignity for their financial gain? Do you think that maybe there was a better way to fundraise? What I've just described to you is our current model of poverty marketing, one which perpetuates poverty. But in this talk, I would like to propose a better model, one which will maintain dignity and promote progress. We have an issue as a human population. We have the need to create an us versus them, a we versus they. We are able to help. They are helpless. We have resources. They lack what they need. We are educated. They are uneducated. We separate ourselves because we have the need to play the savior. So we create a them that we can save with images and stories that set them apart. This technique of using sad photos and awful situations for fundraising has become known as poverty porn. Images of children with distended bellies, homelessness, dirty faces, and tattered clothes. And it's not the images themselves that are the issue. The issue is the exploitation of the lives of the poor in order to generate dollars through sympathy and pity. At its core, it sells poverty while claiming to solve poverty. And as a fundraising technique, it works. We are completely mesmerized by the distressing photos and awful situations. It drives a knife of guilt into our guts and opens our wallets. But this model requires a steady stream of malnourished children, inadequate housing, detailed trauma, and crippling disease in order to maintain a steady cash flow. It is not okay to fund service to the poor through the direct exploitation of the poor. We have shifted from eliminating poverty to commoditizing it, and poverty is not for sale. When we sell what is, we perpetuate what is instead of promoting what could be. I believe that we can either perpetuate poverty or promote progress. And to explain, I want to use the common proverb, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. The lemons are the real world issues. The lemonade is the progress made toward the solution. When we perpetuate poverty, we concentrate on the lemons. When we promote progress, we concentrate on the lemonade. To give a real life example, let me tell you about my dear friend Salome. Salome was my host father in El Salvador, and I do have his permission to use him as an example. I'll give you two very real stories about Salome, and I'll follow each with a financial ask, just like in a fundraising campaign. So here's the first story. Salome labors for 12 hours under the hot sun every day to grow corn and beans to feed his family. At best, he can make $5 a day. And after he walks the long 3 miles back to his humble home, he doesn't even have running water to take a shower. The water only flows through the pipes for a few minutes to a few hours every 2 to 6 weeks, and when it does, his family rushes to fill every bucket, every barrel, every basin, every container they have to tide them over for however long it takes to get water again. And if that wasn't bad enough, the water is infested with parasites, and Salome suffers from extreme digestive issues. A well and water filters will cost $8,000. Can you spare just $20 to help Salome? Now you might be thinking to yourself, sure, $20, no big deal, great cause. But all I told you about were the sour lemons of Salome's poverty. So the next time I want to get you to donate, I'm going to need another sad story, and another, and another, and this is exploiting the poor for charity. This is perpetuating poverty. So here's the second story. Salome is an incredibly intelligent and innovative man. Because his running water is extremely inconsistent, he used appropriate technology techniques to collect rainwater on high ground and pipe it to lower ground using gravity so that he and his family can have a working rainwater shower. Now, this does not supply all of their water needs, and there is an issue of parasites in the water. But Salome is a well-respected individual, and he sits on a council board that makes decisions to impact and better the lives of his community. And Salome and the council have decided that they would like to tackle this water issue. With community input, they have determined that the most appropriate long-term solution to their problem is a communal well and water filters. The well and water filters will cost $8,000. The community will pay for the upkeep and maintenance of the well. Would you like to be a financial sponsor at $20? Could you hear the difference in the two stories? Notice that they both talk about the lemons. Those are the real issues. They both have the same financial ask. But in one, I perpetuated his poverty, and in the other, I promoted his progress. We have a choice in what we support and what we promote. It is so much harder to raise money with dignity. It takes a big commitment. But here are some things we can do. First, we need to change the way in which we define charitable success. Too often, charitable success is defined by the number of people served, or the number of mouths fed, or the amount of clothes given away. But all this measures is how consistent the need is. It does not measure the progress toward the solution. So we have to shift our mindsets to measure success as consistent progress instead of consistent need. Next, we need to stop the cycle of perpetuating poverty. We know that the sad stories and photos pumped out by charitable organizing campaigns raise hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and yet year after year they continue to vomit more sad stories and more sad photos. Why? Because we're paying them to do it. By paying into it, we are churning out a cycle of pity and advertising and obsession with poverty. But we have the power to change the cycle. Take a look at the organizations that you support. Do they perpetuate poverty or promote progress? Good organizations will listen to their audience. So through our words, our actions, our letters, and our dollars of support, we need to tell organizations that we want to support hope and change. Ask them to support strength. Ask them to support resilience. Ask them to empower. Demand positive branding over poverty branding. If selling poverty no longer works, organizations will have no choice but to change. We don't want organizations to perpetuate the lemons of life. We want them to promote the lemonade. Because humanity is worth more than the poverty we sell. Every story deserves to be told with dignity, and the change begins with us. It is my hope that the slogan of this generation will not be that we perpetuated the injustice of poverty. Instead, let it be that we promoted the justice of progress. Thank you.
Hey there, I hate to do this, but we have to take a quick 10-minute break. We'll be right back, and we want you to stay engaged in this quick break. So we're going to allow you to learn a little bit more about some of our TEDx speakers by reading their bios. We'll be right back. Hold tight, and I hope you guys are still using that hashtag bridging the gap.
Hey everyone, my name is Nolan Flaherty, and I'm a Vice President of Student Government Association here at UIS. When we heard about the TEDxUOFIS proposal and the great event that would follow, we had to become a co-sponsor. Here at SGA, we work to better campus and to create a lasting impact on society. The TEDxUOFIS proposal, brought to us by one of our senators, Anton Evans Jr., will be a great asset to our campus going forward. And I wanted to also talk about how our students can become great assets to campus as well through UIS SGA. To find more information about the SGA elections that are upcoming this April, visit uis.edu/SGA. We hope you enjoy this event, and we hope that this event has a great impact on the future of our campus and the great Springfield area. Thank you very much, and enjoy.
Hi everyone, my name is Menno Servaas. I'm a junior and international student from Belgium. At UIS, I serve as the president of the Research Society, the senator for the College of Business and Management, and I'm also the captain of the UIS men's tennis team. Today, I invite you to think about one of the elements we have full control over, and that is the decision we make throughout the day. More specifically, I challenge you to visualize that feeling you have right before making a small or big decision. By appreciating this feeling, I want us to bridge the gap between that nameless feeling in your gut and the opportunities that lay ahead of you. Please enjoy my talk, When Should You Choose to Ignore Your Gut? The reason why I'm here today is not because I'm the most incredible speaker you've ever seen. It's not because I have any better ideas than anyone in this room. The reason why I'm here today is because of a dinner I had with my parents 4 years ago. And for that, let me take you back to October of 2017. I was 17 years old, a senior in high school, and just like most of us at that age, I was asked what I wanted to do after my graduation by probably every relative I could possibly think of. Pretty nerve-wracking already, right? Then, this idea of going to the United States to study and play collegiate tennis came up in my mind. I got super excited until I realized that I would probably have to leave my home country, Belgium, and say goodbye to my parents for almost 4 years. This thought by itself is pretty scary. Now, imagine suggesting it to your parents. I had this idea for a couple of days, maybe even weeks, and one night I came home from school and I thought to myself, this is the night I'm gonna tell them. So I went downstairs for dinner, sat down, and got extremely nervous. Even though my parents are the most supportive ones out there, it had never been that hard to speak up. I could feel my heart beating out of my chest, and I could feel my throat narrow. I knew that all I had to do was say that first word. After 10 long minutes of conquering that awkward feeling in my stomach, I finally decided to speak up. And I know for a fact that without speaking up and overcoming that feeling, I wouldn't be standing here today. Too often, we don't say that first word. And instead, we let that feeling right before we make a decision hold us back. So let's dive into that feeling a little bit more. The feeling I'm talking about is that nervous but also exciting feeling that you get right before committing to something you feel drawn to, but you're also pretty scared of. So let me ask you these two questions. Who has ever not applied for a job because they thought they weren't qualified for it? And who has ever postponed or canceled the first date? Well, if you raise your hand after the second question, you might have just gone out with your friends instead. However, in both situations, there's a big chance that the same feeling I had at the dinner table 4 years ago came between you and the opportunity. I've tried to describe that feeling so many times before, and somehow I never was able to put a name to it. That's why I started calling it that nameless feeling. And as I'm talking about this, you might notice that this feeling is double-sided. On the one side, we have our gut, our true self that draws us in a certain direction. But on the other side, we have our rational self that tells us to run away as far as humanly possible. And to be honest, the last time I had that nameless feeling was right there, right before I was walking up on the stage. Now, for the remainder of this talk, I challenge you to visualize that feeling for something you have going on in your life right now, or maybe in the near future. When you go home today and you try to explain this feeling to a friend or a family member, they might just reply by saying, well, isn't that just a leap of faith? The reason why I don't want to call it a leap of faith is because a leap is often only a small step. And a leap of faith is definitely not blind faith. So you might wonder, well, what happens if it doesn't turn out well? And what is that small step? 2 years ago, I was talking with a roommate of mine about the fact that I was still struggling with the divorce of my parents. And on top of that, I was dealing with some injuries. Him, being a good roommate and friend of mine, suggested that I'd go see a sports psychologist. And you think that seeing a sports psychologist and setting up an appointment would be easy, right? Well, so did I. Until I sat down before my computer, typed out the email, and all I had to do was click send. Again, that nameless feeling came up, and I went back and forth to my computer at least 4 or 5 times. It never became easier. 2 days later, I decided to take that small step, and I can say that this has been one of the most influential and powerful steps I've ever taken. When you look at it this way, you realize that it's often not a leap of faith, but just a small step. Now, recognizing that feeling is crucial, but knowing when and how to take that small step might be more intimidating. I think most of us would agree if I said that decisions, small or big, are important. Wayne Dyer once said, "Our lives are the sum of the total decisions we've made." So knowing how quickly one decision flows into the next one and add up, it's crucial to make sure that they add up to something good for us. From a very young age, people ask us what we want to become and do with our lives. And a couple of years later, they also start adding the question of why. Why do we do what we do? And to answer both of these questions, I challenge you to seek that nameless feeling and use it as a guide. That feeling is there for a reason. You simply cannot fake it. And here's why. In a study conducted by Bark and Chartrand, they found that most of our everyday thinking, feeling, and decision-making happen unconsciously. They argue that the evaluations we've made in the past guide our actions in the present unconsciously. Now, this is something really good because when we know that these automatic processes, also known as our gut, they'll probably take care of things for us. Let's go back to using that feeling, nameless feeling, as a guide, because this might be easier said than done. Especially when we want to make that small step, we often fear what might happen next. We fear what might happen next because the biology of fear is there to protect us from uncertainty, because this might lead us to risking our lives. However, when we know that taking that small step won't put us in danger, let's start using it as a guide and develop ourselves in ways we didn't even know were possible. You might wonder, well, what happens if you overcome that nameless feeling, you take that small step, and it doesn't go your way? 2 weeks ago, I was asked the same question by a mentor of mine. I was sitting in his office, and he said, Menno, when was the last time you overcame that nameless feeling, took that small step, and it didn't go your way? And I sat there for a couple of minutes, and I couldn't think of a single time it didn't turn out well. And when I thought about it more, I realized, of course, there have been times when things didn't go my way. But somehow, I didn't experience it as something negative. The reason for this is because you can never regret doing something and committing to something you do with the intention to develop yourself. Theodore Roosevelt says it well in his life philosophy titled The Man in the Arena. Here he says, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. Thinking back of the times I felt that nameless feeling, I knew that my parents would be supportive. I knew that my sports psychologist would book an appointment with me. But still, that nameless feeling came between me and the opportunity. Throughout my young life, I realized that this nameless feeling is one of the most natural and powerful ways to stay true to ourselves. That's why I would like to leave you with this challenge for today, tomorrow, and the days after that. I challenge you to reach out to the person you've always wanted to talk to. I challenge you to apply for those programs you thought you weren't qualified for. And more importantly, I challenge you to seek that nameless feeling, use it as a guide, and develop yourselves in ways you didn't even know were possible. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Taryn Christie. I am a junior double majoring in political science and legal studies here at the University of Illinois Springfield. I am so honored and excited to chat with you guys today in my talk, Why Aren't Prisons Built for Periods? So let's dive in and get uncomfortable as we bridge the gap between prisons and the public. Enjoy and thanks for listening. Imagine this. You're 12, maybe 13 years old, and life is good, right? I mean, sure, maybe you have a math test on Tuesday. Oh, and you're really hoping you get invited to that big pool party coming up. But you know, for the most part, you've got it all figured out. So you're a preteen, you just go to the bathroom one day, you look down, and you realize that you're bleeding from somewhere. You're not even really sure where. You panic, dying. Yes, you definitely might be dying. So you do what any logical person would do, and you go find your mom, and she says you're not dying. She says that you just got your first period. Pause. All right. Are you guys uncomfortable yet? You're worried that I'm going to keep describing what it's like for a preteen to get their first period? Well, I'm not going to lie to you. Parts of this talk are going to be uncomfortable. Because it is awkward, right? I mean, sure, yes, periods are natural and normal and all that good stuff. But that doesn't make it any easier to talk about. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. So this isn't going to be a big periods are beautiful talk. I'll be the first one to say that more often than not, they're a considerable pain. And I would personally be a lot more comfortable in one of those cozy auditorium seats instead of being up here talking about them. So keeping all of this in mind, let's get back into that mindset of the 13-year-old who thinks they're bleeding out. Now, generally speaking, most preteens get the learning control curve under control in due time. Sure, the pool party was awkward when everyone asked why you wouldn't get in the pool to swim. But if you're from a middle-class family, period care will likely become relatively uncomfortable but largely mundane. You'll buy your monthly packs of pads, tampons, or you'll invest in a menstrual cup, and you'll keep going with your life. So for the majority of us, it's definitely easier and certainly more comfortable to not talk about that time of the month. And we shouldn't have to talk about it if we don't want to, right? But if you're one of the 1 in 5 women in the United States who cannot afford menstrual hygiene products each month, talking about it is going to become a serious part of your wellness. Because when you're faced with either free bleeding or asking for an extra pad, these are those times when talking about it becomes non-negotiable. Insufficient access to period products is commonly referred to as period product insecurity, and this could be an entire talk in itself. But today, I'm going to narrow in and talk about how incarcerated women are so uniquely affected by the consequences of period product insecurity. Now, I'll start with a few critical distinctions before we really get into things. First, I want to make it unequivocally clear that not every person who experiences a period identifies as a woman. Transgender individuals experiencing periods inside men's correctional facilities are increasingly at risk of essentially every single issue I'm going to address today. But there isn't any kind of database establishing who identifies as transgender in correctional facilities, making their stories and experiences more difficult to track down. Today, I am primarily focusing on the experiences of women simply because that's the data I have access to. My second statement is more of a personal one. While I have visited prisons, cared deeply for people who are incarcerated, and have researched this issue with a passionate fire in my stomach, I will never be able to truly understand or speak for the people who have experienced having a period in prison firsthand. My hope is that this talk will empower those individuals to share their story in whatever platform suits their needs, and that my talk can promote practices and resources to further their fight for equity. Now, moving into some more technical distinctions. What is a period? Now, we don't need to get too scientific here, so think of it this way. The female body goes what's called a menstrual cycle, so this is a series of repeating events. The cycle is controlled by hormones with the ultimate goal of preparing the body for pregnancy. In preparation for a fertilized egg to implant itself in the uterine wall thickens. If a fertilized egg is not implanted, though, then this thickened lining begins to shed and prepare to restart that cycle. When we shed the lining, we bleed it out. The average period lasts for about 3 to 7 days, and every woman experiences this process differently. Some women bleed more than others, and in general, menstrual cycles are not like clockwork. They can be irregular, and for women with conditions such as endometriosis or other complications, the bleeding can last for weeks at a time and be accompanied by excruciating cramping. Wow, so that's a lot of blood, right? How do women manage periods then? Well, here we see tampons, pads, liners, and menstrual cups. Menstrual cups are not currently offered at any carceral facility based on my research, even though they provide a really unique and high amount of bodily autonomy. See, menstrual cups are reusable, eliminating the need to provide a constant stream of products and giving a woman security and knowing that she will always be able to handle her period comfortably. This is not the case for pads, liners, and tampons, which are all disposable, so they need to be changed out frequently in order to avoid dangerous and painful infections. Currently, only a handful of states have any kind of policy offering free menstrual supplies in their state prisons. And often these policies only include access to pads or liners, so tampons must still be purchased at commissary. We see a few things start to happen as supplies dwindle down. First, a woman running low on supplies might try to just buy more at commissary. But keep in mind some of these numbers from the Prison Policy Initiative. We know that half of all incarcerated women are actually housed in jails, not prisons. Jails are smaller facilities meant for people awaiting trial or serving out really short sentences. The short-term nature of jails means that there is often less programming, less wage earning opportunities, and less resources in general. Now add on the fact that a majority of these women are primary caretakers for children, and we start to see how an incarcerated woman's money can be spread really thin. Often women are faced with spending half their month's wage on a box of tampons from commissary, or for paying for extra time on the phone with a loved one. So let's say that she can't afford to buy more tampons, but she has a really heavy period and she's desperate for help. Well, she can try to make an appointment with a nurse, but this is often a really dehumanizing experience. Typical procedure states that a woman requesting more pads for medical reasons will be given a fresh pad to use, and then the nurse will examine the amount of blood on the pad to determine whether or not they think the woman actually needs more pads. Again, there is very little bodily autonomy involved in this process. But I'll just add, that periods don't really work like this. It's not just the same amount of blood all day, every day. The amount of blood depends on what part of the cycle you're in. So if you can't get an appointment on your heaviest day, well, they might just not believe you that you even need any more pads. No matter what, incarcerated women are at the liberty of other people making these distinctions on whether or not they need necessary health supplies. So some prisons have policies where the woman can get more pads if she personally asks a correctional officer. But this puts the woman in a really unique and vulnerable situation. We're not talking about a woman asking a correctional officer for more toothpaste here. We're talking about a woman under correctional control asking her direct supervising figure for a supply that they know she literally needs in order to avoid bleeding through her clothes and humiliating herself. In the most extreme circumstances, this power dynamic was in full display at the Alabama Women's Prison. A federal investigation at the Julia Tutwiler Prison for Women revealed that male correctional officers were withholding menstrual supplies from women in exchange for sex. Though this is an extreme example, I think it really captures the gravity of incarcerated women's vulnerability when faced with insufficient menstrual supplies. These issues are not going away, and they're not just going to get solved on their own. Women are the fastest growing prison population by far, growing by 834% over the past 40 years. So how can you, the people sitting here today or watching this on a screen, do anything about access to menstrual supplies in women's prisons? Well, essentially, it all boils down to this. Not talking about periods is not a privilege that everyone has. Regardless of whether or not a carceral institution has free menstrual supplies, the women still have to ask for more supplies every time they need them. When asked about providing unlimited menstrual supplies to incarcerated women, a male state representative from Maine notoriously stated that the jail system and the prison system were never meant to be a country club. But what do you think? Did what I just described really sound like a country club to you? If anything, that representative is proving my point perfectly. We all need to be talking about periods, whether you experience one or not. How can we expect our representatives or our prison officials to understand and to prioritize these issues when the general public tends to shy away from period talk altogether? At a minimum, it deserves a dialogue. As we've seen here today, incarcerated women do not have the choice to avoid these conversations. So yeah, talking about periods is uncomfortable, but keep in mind that for incarcerated women, speaking up is part of getting by. Thank you.
What a show, right? Good afternoon. My name is Anton Evans Jr., and I am so happy to be the TEDxUofISpringfield director for its first year. My mom always would say when I would be having a bad day or she felt like I needed to have a different perspective or outlook on situations, your attitude determines your altitude. And for the last 6 months, I have been asked by countless amount of people, how did you come up with this idea? How did you know it would be possible? Why did you do it? And I believe that my attitude towards this situation made it all happen. I envisioned this stage, not to this level, because it honestly excited and rocked me. I've been smiling all day. But I envisioned that we would have a sign behind us. And I am so thankful for the Sangamon Reclaim for working with us today as we built our sign. I also knew that we would have the amazing staple of a TEDx event, the red rug. And I am thankful for Student Life purchasing this item for us. In addition to ensuring that we had our safety ambassadors here today to ensure that we were following COVID-19 protocols. Moreover, I knew that I would have to keep people engaged. And we are so happy that we are able to give away items today that were sponsored by the Student Life, the Student Union, and the Student Activity Committee as they provided those items for us. More importantly, we are so grateful to have items to give to our speakers, and we are grateful to have our speaker decals that were made by the Brookings Library. But we knew that today we would be running on fumes. We were running up and down, going the entire week, and we are thankful for the College of Education and Human Services for providing us lunch today. We also are so thankful for the Performing Arts Center for going above and beyond, working with us for the last 3 months to ensure that we had lighting and mics and cameras, and to ensure that you at home were able to see this live stream today. But I knew before I could make everything that I'm envisioning happen, I would have to get some people to buy into what I was talking about. I was walking around kind of as a salesman selling chocolate, and I was like, hey, do you want to buy some? I have it as a discount. And so I knew that I needed some people to get involved. And so I'm thankful for these 3 groups of people that I were able to try to reel in for the last 6 months. And one, I would like to thank my personal family and friends, because coming on this committee and being the director and figuring out things, a lot of times I didn't know what I was personally doing, but I knew that I had people in my corner that I could turn to, and we would figure it out before the next time we had a meeting, and I had to answer a question that was asked to me. And I'm also thankful for our speakers. Today, right now, this vote of thanks is the easiest thing to would have happened on this red rug. Our speakers for the last 4 months have gone through a series of processes and drafts and meetings and practices, meeting with speaking coaches, and I knew that we would need them to get involved. And so I'm thankful for them for rocking the stage today as they prepared their 10-minute talks. But most importantly, they ensured that they knew everything from memory. And I believe that they all did an amazing job. And last but not least, I would like to thank my committee. From October 7th, we started to meet bi-weekly. And then we picked up the pace, meeting weekly. And we knew that if we wanted today to go off without a hitch, we would have to meet, and meet some more. And so we went from meetings to 6 a.m. text messages, to 10-hour work days, to run-throughs, to Zoom calls, and the list goes on of everything that went on. And the other day, someone asked me, hey, did you pull this off by yourself? And I'm like, no, I couldn't do it by myself. And if I did, it wouldn't be to this quality because of the sweat and blood and tears that each of us have put in, the endless nights. And I want them to know by name that it hasn't gone unnoticed. And so to Moyo and Mason and Z, Cameron, Hannah, and Jace, and Ben, it has not gone unnoticed. Your hard work has been seen. It has been seen by the countless people in this room. It has been seen by the people I'm sure are texting me right now as they see I'm talking. It has been seen, it is noticed, you are heard, and we are so thankful for what you have done. But last but not least, I would like to thank 2 important organizations and departments on campus. I would like to start by thanking the Student Government Association. Being a senator, I had this amazing idea and I knew that I wanted to accomplish it, but I needed the approval and the resolutions to go through for me to create and fund this event. And I am thankful for SGA standing by this entire 6 months and ensuring that I stayed on track and that they were funding a huge portion of what happened today in our budget. More importantly, I want to thank the Department of Communication for not only lending us their faculty, but lending us their graduate assistant as they worked to be speaking coaches, and their graduate assistant worked to be the co-director on this committee. And so with that, I leave you asking, if you're sitting at home and you're wondering, how can we ensure TEDxUOFI Springfield 22 and 23 and 35? This is 3 ways in which you can make this happen. And so 1, we have advisor applications open on Monday for anyone that is a faculty or staff here at UIS. You are welcome to work and apply and interview to be an advisor for this committee as we try to ensure the longevity. To students who want to do this, want to do all of the behind work, want to ensure that we have everything perfectly together for our speakers next year. We have senior TEDx positions open in 2 weeks. You will see email blasts about them in a few days. And lastly, if you're thinking, I want to be a sponsor, we welcome you all. We welcome the small businesses, the corporations, the departments, the head of the deans, the head of departments. We welcome all of you within the Springfield area and UIS committee to come here and to sponsor this event. And so with that, I want to end by simply saying thank you. Thank you to each of you. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for watching our live stream. I am so happy and so grateful for this opportunity, and I cannot wait for this to happen next year. And with that, I wish you all have a great evening.
So the time has finally come. We have to say goodbye. But I really hope you guys really enjoyed this TEDx event at UIS. I definitely enjoyed being a part of the committee. And if you want to see how you can be a part of this committee next year, be sure to be on the lookout for emails and notifications on how you can join the team or maybe even be a speaker. I hope you guys have learned a lot, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much again for tuning in. And remember, you can still use the hashtag Bridging the Gap. Bye.